Next on the agenda, we have the episode Gone. The episode starts off with SpongeBob waking up, but something's off. His pet snail Gary is missing.
Gary, come and get it!
SpongeBob's a little concerned, but figures maybe Gary's just hiding or out for a stroll. Then it gets really weird. SpongeBob steps outside and it hits him like a ton of bricks. Everyone is gone. Not just Gary, but the entire town of Bikini Bottom has vanished. The whole place is deserted. It's like an underwater ghost town, except instead of tumbleweeds, it's just bubbles and jellyfish floating by. Understandably, SpongeBob flips out. I mean, wouldn't you? He starts running through the streets, yelling for his friends Patrick, Squidward, Mr. Krabs, but nope, not a soul in sight.
Gone! 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 Gone!
At first, it's full-on panic mode. SpongeBob runs through jellyfish fields, zips through blue lagoons, even checks the trees, where no one ever is. But not.
That I will keep the memory of Bikini Bottom alive by living out their lives for them.
There's literally no one anywhere. The whole town's empty. It's like a post-apocalyptic episode, but way less serious and way more SpongeBob. The poor guy is starting to unravel, pacing around like he's lost his mind. After searching every nook and cranny of Bikini Bottom, he finally realizes he's truly alone. And that's when SpongeBob comes up with the plan. If there's no one left in Bikini Bottom, well, guess what? He's just gonna be everyone.
I'm Johnny. Welcome to my store.
Yup, he takes matters into his own
Totally
spongy
worth the
hands and
price.
decides to live
You're
out
my
everyone's
favorite
lives.
customer.
First up,
See ya.
he makes a bubble version of himself to keep him company. A bubble version of SpongeBob for moral support, clearly. Next, he marches over to Squidward's house. Now, we all know how Squidward feels about SpongeBob. He's always telling him to keep it down, right? So, naturally, SpongeBob takes it upon himself to become
Night is coming,
Squidward. He
so
climbs
we
to
need
the
to
top
keep
floor of
these
Squidward's
fires
house and
burning.
starts
Allie
yelling at
put the
himself.
right amount of
He's out there,
firewood
pretending to be
into
Squidward,
each fire.
scolding SpongeBob for
There's a
being
number
loud.
on each
It's
fire
actually kind
and
of
a math
hilarious,
problem on
especially
each
because
group of
SpongeBob's
firewood.
Squidward voice is
Use
not
your
exactly
mouse to
spot
swap the
on.
fires
But
around
why
so that
stop
the
there?
firewood falls
SpongeBob's
in
on a
the
roll,
fires
so
with
he
the
heads over to the
matching
Krusty
answers.
Krab next. There, he goes full method actor, playing both Mr. Krabs and Squidward. He's standing behind the cash register, talking to himself like a crazy person, switching voices back and forth and trying to pretend like everything's normal.
again.
But SpongeBob's committed to this bizarre role-playing game. Next up is Patrick. SpongeBob heads over to
You're
Patrick's
doing
rock and pops in to do his
fantastic.
best starfish impression.
You got it.
Patrick's usually, well, not the sharpest tool in the shed, so SpongeBob's version of him is, let's say, accurate. After his little Patrick
Try
performance,
again.
SpongeBob heads over to Sandy's tree dome and tries to channel his inner Texas squirrel.
May I have some more of this
You got it.
delicious iced tea? Why, sure! Oop, just
Let's
that.
add another fire.
Honestly, SpongeBob's got the impersonation game down, but living out everyone else's lives? Not as fun as he thought it'd be. And this is where it starts to get really sad. SpongeBob
You
heads to
got it.
Mrs. Puff's boating school, and while sitting in the classroom, it finally dawns on him this is not working.
Anyone tell me the first thing you do when driving a boat?
Floor it?
He can't be everyone else.
camping.
SpongeBob slumps over on Mrs. Puff's desk and just lets it all out. He's alone, and it's starting to get to him. It's a genuine SpongeBob moment of realization, and you can't help but feel for the guy.
This is pointless! I'm no Mrs. Puff!
But wait, SpongeBob's mood does a 180 when he spots something that gives him a spark of hope, a stack of blank driver's licenses. In a moment of sheer brilliance,
Ooh, blank driver's license. That's the baby.
he takes a picture of himself, prints out his own license, and, you guessed it, he's driving now. He names the student boat Bodie, and suddenly, it's SpongeBob and Bodie against the world.
Yeah, listen to that purr.
The two become inseparable best buds. SpongeBob even parks Bodhi inside his house and tucks it in at night. This sponge is officially losing it, people. And if you thought that was the weirdest part, just wait. SpongeBob's loneliness really starts to mess with his head. Without any real friends around, he turns to the next best thing, meet Patrick.
He was telling me a joke.
You're awfully chummy with that guy for someone who has it out for ya.
Who, Bodhi?
Yeah, he creates a puppet version of Patrick using raw Krabby Patty meat. SpongeBob is now having full conversations with this meat puppet, like legit heart-to-heart talks. At one point, Meat Patrick even warns SpongeBob that Bodhi is always listening, which is just, wow, talk about losing it. Then, just when you think SpongeBob's fully cracked, a bus rolls into town. Naturally, SpongeBob loses it completely, grabs a fire axe, don't ask me where he got it, and charges at the bus. Bus like a madman. He's ready to take that bus out until the doors open. And surprise, everyone in Bikini Bottom steps out. Turns out, the whole town wasn't missing after all. They were just on a little vacation.
Huh?
Not just any vacation though. Oh no, it was National No SpongeBob Day. Yeah, that's right. The entire town took a day off from SpongeBob. Poor SpongeBob. First, he thought everyone had disappeared forever, but now he finds out they all left on purpose to get a break from him. Mr. Krabs explains that National No SpongeBob Day is actually a huge honor because it means SpongeBob's such a big deal. They had to make a whole holiday just for him.
No SpongeBob Day!
National No SpongeBob Day?
Yeah!
Somehow, SpongeBob feels better about it. You know, because of Bikini Bottom logic. But of course, in classic Patrick fashion, he can't let SpongeBob have all the attention. Patrick claims that his holiday, National No Patrick Day, is way worse. And the moment he mentions it, the entire town jumps back on the bus, ready to celebrate that holiday. Except this time, Patrick's left standing alone, scratching his head and wondering, where did everybody go? Ah, Patrick is always a step behind. And that's it. SpongeBob learned, well, something? Maybe that sometimes people need a break, but it doesn't mean they don't appreciate you. Either way, Bikini Bottom is back to its chaotic, kooky self, and SpongeBob is back in the mix, probably dreaming up his next adventure, or, you know, Meat Puppet. Last up, we're going over the episode named Grandma's Kisses. The episode kicks off with SpongeBob visiting his grandma's house.
There it is, Grandma's house. What wonders await me today?
This guy's daydreaming, cookies, spoon licking, story time, the works.
3 o'clock? I'm gonna be late for work.
Hop in my car. I'll drop you off.
But once 3 p.m. rolls around, it's time for him to get back to work at the Krusty Krab. When SpongeBob walks into work with that kiss mark on his head, the teasing begins. Squidward, customers, everyone's having a good laugh. SpongeBob, not so much. He hightails it home in tears. Back at home, SpongeBob's venting to Patrick, and in true Patrick fashion, he comes up with the plan. Show Grandma he's a full-grown adult. Ditch the baby stuff.
You gonna tell Grandma?
I'm a grown-up.
No ifs, ands, or buts about it.
A man's gotta do what a man's gotta do.
The next day, SpongeBob and Patrick march over to Grandma's house, both of them decked out in fake sideburns. Because clearly, that's what makes you an adult. When Grandma answers the door, she goes in for the kiss as usual. But SpongeBob pulls the I'm an adult now card and tells her the kisses have to stop.
Sorry, Grandmother, but the kissing has to stop.
Grandma rolls with it and offers them cookies. Patrick dives right in, because who's turning down cookies? Not him. But SpongeBob's still trying to keep up his act.
Sorry, Grandmother. We adults don't partake in the consumption of sweets.
So Grandma hands him a piece of steamed coral instead of the cookies. Yum, right? It just keeps going from there. Patrick's lounging, listening to Grandma read him a fun story about a magical sea leprechaun, while SpongeBob gets a thick, boring book on maintenance routines. And to top it off, Patrick gets a hand-knitted sweater.
You wouldn't be interested in this baby book. Here's the technical manual on routine active maintenance.
While SpongeBob gets office supplies. Talk about a rough trade-off. When 3 p.m. rolls around again, Grandma reminds SpongeBob it's time for work, and she tucks Patrick in for a cozy nap. SpongeBob's still trying to hold it together, talking about how his busy adult schedule won't leave him time for visits.
I'll be going. I've got a lot of adult-type business to take care of. So, I'll see you later.
Okay, thanks for stopping by, SpongeBob.
But then, SpongeBob cracks. His grown-up facade comes crashing down. Those fake sideburns fall off, and he's suddenly yearning for the good old days. Cookies, baby bottles, sweaters, the works. He spirals into full-on baby mode, bawling like a sprinkler system on overdrive.
I don't want to grow up. I want cookies and milky. I want a sweater with love in the stitches.
Thankfully, Grandma knows just what to do. She pulls a plug in the floor, draining all of SpongeBob's tears, and calms him down with a heart-to-heart. She tells him that he doesn't need to be a baby to get her love. He can be a grown-up and still get kisses from Grandma.
To be a baby, to get old Grandma's love?
I don't.
Of course not. No matter how grown up you get, you will always be my little baby boo.
With that, she gives him his sideburns back, hands him a cookie, and SpongeBob's feeling a lot better. He's ready to move on from this little identity crisis, until, of course, he realizes that Squidward and all the customers from the Krusty Krab were watching the whole meltdown from Grandma's window. And there you have it, the most heart-wrenching SpongeBob episodes that tug at your emotions more than you'd ever expect from a show about a sponge and a pineapple. From Gary running away and breaking SpongeBob's heart to Squidward realizing what SpongeBob really means to him. That's it for today. Hit like and subscribe. Comment what episode you would like us to cover next. Until next time, peace out.
SpongeBob Battle for Bikini Bottom is a very weird game, and over the last 20 years of playing this game way more than the average human should, as well as developing all sorts of different mods, I've learned a lot of completely useless fun facts and trivia, most of which you might not know about. So let's not waste any time and get right to the details. Here's 50 obscure facts about SpongeBob Battle for Bikini Bottom. In Sandy's Tree Dome, Sandy tasks you with cleaning out the rampaging robots. Once you begin the fight, you won't be able to talk to her again until all the robots have been defeated. Sandy has unique dialogue that goes completely unused because of this.
Don't even think of speaking to me until you got my house sorted out right.
In SpongeBob's Pineapple, you can actually bubble bowl the stove for this to happen. This building in downtown Rooftops is completely missing its back collision. Yeah, good luck not seeing that now. Having trouble with Prawn? Did you know, if you jump over his ring attack, he'll actually stop using it sooner. You'll have to jump over it multiple times in later phases. You'll be able to end the fight much quicker. You may have noticed, whenever you land SpongeBob's Bubble Bounce, sometimes it will land with a, and other times it'll land with a. This is because the pop animation only plays when you land on an object not baked into the main level model, such as this rocket or this platform. Makes sense, right? Though, you may be surprised at what is an object and what isn't. For example, yep, the entire Krusty Krab found at Bikini Bottom is an asset, despite all the other main buildings here being baked into the level model. You know what's even more bizarre? This is not the case for the exact replica of it found in SpongeBob's dream. Very strange. If you die at any point in the third phase of the Robo Sandy fight, the fallen scoreboard will actually fix itself. Neat! If you try to stun the Monsoon and Kelp Caves using Patrick's Slam attack, the game will actually crash due to a missing animation. In the Robo Patrick battle, if you immediately skip the cutscene starting the third phase, Robo Patrick will use his spit attack on SpongeBob. Of the 9 major levels, SpongeBob's Dream is the only one without a bungee jump. The waterfall in Jellyfish Cave flows out of a jellyfish-shaped hole in the wall. The The 100% cutscene in the Krusty Krab plays in a special Krusty Krab replica present in the SpongeBob arena. You can actually see this replica in-game by positioning yourself right and staring through some transparent textures. This specific springboard in Goo Lagoon Pier will actually launch you higher if you use SpongeBob's bubble bounce on it. This is a remnant of a scrap mechanic in which springboards will give you more height if you bubble bounce on them. Speaking of, in downtown rooftops, there is a fully functional sign that shows the position of the lighthouse. The sign tells you how you can use SpongeBob bubble bounce to bounce higher on spring. This was likely moved out of bounds since the mechanic was scrapped.
Before I catch you!
Battle for Bikini Bottom handles SpongeBob, Patrick, and Sandy's playability in a very different way. SpongeBob is playable in every single area of the game, while Patrick and Sandy are only playable in specific areas. This is because Patrick and Sandy's assets are stored separately. SpongeBob's assets are stored in a global file that is loaded at all times. However, the assets for Patrick and Sandy are stored in individual areas. For example, the asset file for Jellyfish Cave contains Patrick assets, and the asset file for Industrial Park contains Sandy assets. Because of this, if you try entering a level as Patrick or Sandy, but their assets don't exist in the level you are entering, the game will automatically switch you back to SpongeBob. This is mostly consistent for areas where you can't enter as either of the secondary characters, such as Bikini Bottom, but there is one interesting exception. You can enter the first area of the Mermalair as Patrick, despite there being literally nothing for him to do there. Mermaid Man and Barnacle Boy don't even have dialogue programmed with Patrick here. Even more bizarre considering you can exit back to Shady Shoals from here, being the only instance where you can enter Bikini Bottom as someone other than SpongeBob. You can still only play as SpongeBob here, but it's still worth noting. This statue exists in downtown streets. However, if you look at it from the Sea Needle, it looks like some sort of open tuna can? Despite being referred to as Kelp Forest in-game, the first area of Kelp Forest is internally referred to as Kelp Forest Outskirts. Due to an oversight, there are two red shiny objects stacked on top of each other in Jellyfish Lake. The model for these platforms inside Robot SpongeBob is missing a polygon. Each of the tasks in the pause menu are ordered based on which area they can be found in. The first 4 tasks in Rock Bottom, for example, all pertain to tasks found in the first area, downtown Rock Bottom. However, despite all other levels following this listing scheme, there is one exception. The first area of SpongeBob's Dream has 3 golden spatulas. Across the dreamscape, Follow the Bouncing Ball, and Super Bounce. The first 2 tasks are listed first and second, but bizarrely, Super Bounce is listed as the 7th task rather than the 3rd, placing it in between Krabby Patty platforms in Mr. Krabs' Dream, and Here You Go in Patrick's Dream. I think it's safe to assume the reason why this is likely because the 7th task was originally Screaming for Ice Cream, the golden spatula found in the original scrapped Patrick's Dream, before being reworked into Super Bounce. Heavy Iron then forgot to put Super Bounce in the correct task order. Oh well. You can hit SpongeBob's SquarePants shelves in SpongeBob's closet. Throughout the entire game, Sandy and Mermaid Man never share a conversation with each other, making Mermaid Man the only reoccurring NPC to not share a conversation with all 3 playable characters. 3 different music tracks can play in the Wackatiki.
Friend, I have lost you. I don't like that.
What's the problem?
There's a little shiny object inside this flower in Sandy's Dream. The sunscreen stealing hammer in Goo Lagoon Beach can be destroyed using the cruise bubble, which will complete Larry's task as normal. No lifeguard towers required. In Jellyfish Lake, there is a unique conversation between SpongeBob and Mr. Krabs if SpongeBob is the first to enter the area. In casual gameplay, it is impossible to enter for the first time with anyone other than Patrick, so players won't witness this exchange.
Ahoy
Hey there, SpongeBob. Squidward tells me you're looking for the king jellyfish.
Yes, sir, Mr. Krabs.
Good thing, too. That monster has been stinging all my good customers in their poop decks. I hear that you can find him up top of Old Sport Mountain here. Go hook that beast, sailor.
Aye, Mr. Krabs.
Interestingly, based on the wording in the two different conversations, it would seem this was designed for SpongeBob specifically, before Heavy Iron realized this conversation would be impossible to witness. Thus, the voice lines were reworked for a Patrick conversation. Don't believe me? This line for Patrick is recycled from Kelp Swamp.
Oh boy, Mr. Krabs. I'll see what I can do. Oh boy, Mr. Krabs. I'll see what I can do.
The dialogue from the fish announcer that appears on the side of the screen with the side home is accurate to whenever the fish announcer talks at his desk. Slick's introduction cutscene in Graveyard Lake won't play if the Slick has been defeated. In the first area of Kelp Forest, pressing this button will play a cutscene showing the growing kelp stock, which halts movement. However, the very next button does the exact same thing, but does not halt movement, despite assets existing in the files, such as camera angles, to allow for a similar cutscene to play. Every single main explorable area has at least one purple shiny object to find, except for Downtown Streets, which has two. With the exception of the first clam in Jellyfish Rock and the dream clams in SpongeBob's Dream, each of the main clam tolls scales by 100 shiny objects with each main level. Starting at 2,000 in Jellyfish Fields, this increases to 2,100 in Downtown Bikini Bottom, 2,200 in Goo Lagoon, 2,300 in the Mermalair, 2,400 in Rock Bottom, 2,500 in Sand Mountain, 2,600 in Kelp Forest, 2,700 in the Flying Dutchman's Graveyard, and 2,800 in SpongeBob's Dream. In Guppy Mound, starting Mrs. Puff's time trial will play the music for Downtown Bikini Bottom at the start of the slide rather than the original slide theme.
Will you marry me?
The reason why this is actually really funny. Whenever the game plays music for a certain event, such as slides or ambushes, it runs a command with a certain numbered argument. For slides, it runs this command with argument 15, which corresponds to the slide theme. However, in this specific case in Guppy Mound, it runs argument 2, which links to the Downtown Bikini Bottom theme. I honestly have no idea how this happened. Every single floating island in Sandy's Dream is shaped like Texas. There is an arrow seemingly lodged into this building in Downtown Rooftops. In specifically the GameCube version of the game, this umbrella texture is bugged, causing the bamboo pole and flowers to appear transparent in-game. Since this texture is recycled for these poles in Rock Bottom Museum, the same thing happens there too. This is what these should look like. You can hit these pipe things in the Mermalair for shiny objects.
After hours in the halls.
Sandy has a very subtle idle animation in which her tail moves up and down rather than left and right. As we all know, on the Dutchman's ship, activating all of the Dutchman's cannons will cause the task's golden spatula to appear and the chest with the cannon's launch button to open. After destroying the robot cannons, you'll be able to launch the cannons, destroy the robot ship, and activate the cutscene to fight the Flying Dutchman. What you might not know is there is a massive oversight here. If you launch the cannons before destroying the robot cannons, a cutscene will play showing the robot cannons destroying the incoming cannonballs. However, since you have already pressed the button to launch the cannons, the task to defeat the Flying Dutchman will become available in the pause menu regardless, which you can just warp to go right to the arena like normal, meaning you don't need to destroy the robot cannons to complete the task. Isn't that something? The model for Robo SpongeBob used in the first phase of the final boss oddly features conveyor belts on the inside of his head, despite no conveyor belts actually showing up in the second phase. Out of Bounds in Sandy's Tree Dome is a seemingly much earlier version of Goo Lagoon, one with a much more simplified Goo Lagoon pier. When you have enough shiny objects to enter the feeder, but don't open it in the first text box, the box office guy has a random chance to speak two different voice lines.
What would you like to see today, sir? May I help you?
This is the only conversation in the entire game to be with us.
Oh, Sam, no books.
Patrick can't talk to the Merlin computer. Using Sandy's cover in this specific area of the Rock Bottom Museum will cause Hans to grab you.
Generous donation.
This cannon button, despite seeming like it must be activated by a bubble bounce, can be pressed with a regular bubble spin. All of the individual areas in the game are categorized by 2 letters followed by the area number. The first area of Jellyfish Fields is named JF01 internally, while the third area of Rock Bottom is named RB03 internally. Makes sense, right? Well, a very interesting observation can be made because of this. Let's take a look at how the kelp forest areas are named internally. The first area is named KF01, Kelp Swamp is KF02, Kelp Caves is KF04, and Kelp Vines is KF05. That's strange. Where's KF03? Was it a scrapped area between Kelp Swamp and Kelp Caves? Or perhaps it was a Heavy Iron intern that titled the Kelp Caves files incorrectly? We may never know for sure. This button at the Goo Lagoon Beach has its collision active at all times.
No being in school after hours in the halls.
Meaning, with the right positioning, you can activate the Dragons Challenge without spending any shiny objects. Rolling the giant boulder and sand mountain down the slope a second time will cause it to travel slightly longer down the avalanche path.
Hands up!
This
No escaping detention in the hall.
In downtown streets accidentally has Mrs. Puff speaking Sandy's line.
Well, if it isn't Sandy Cheeks.
Howdy, Mrs. Puff. Howdy, Mrs. Puff.
Downtown Rock Bottom and the Trench of Advanced Darkness were seemingly modeled together, as loading both of them at the same time in Industrial Park has the two of them line up together almost perfectly. If you punch in a cheat code, doesn't matter what code it is, every NPC will face away from you from now on, as if publicly shunning you for cheating in a children's game.
This will fill out your map.
And finally, the Krusty Krab is completely missing in the intro cutscene.
Thank you. My parents would have been so proud that I made a sale. Thank you.
Now that's a lot of
I might
obscure
not
facts,
starve.
a surplus of
Thank you
obscurity,
for
but that's all I've
shopping.
got for today. What was your favorite fact? Learn something new or have more obscure trivia to share? Comment below! Thanks for watching, and subscribe for more Battle for Bikini Bottom content. See you all next time.
Are you ready, kids?
Hey guys, and welcome back to another Lost Bits video right here on Tetrabit Gaming, the series where we explore video game content that goes unused, altered, or normally unseen. SpongeBob SquarePants. Now this has always been one of my favorite cartoons, if not favorite shows ever. And touted by many as being the best SpongeBob video game, it's no surprise that fans are hyped for the Battle for Bikini Bottom rehydrated remake. And this is also a video many of you have been requesting for a very, very long time, so I really do hope you enjoy. Before we start though, just want to give a quick shout out to the Minus World channel. If you don't know, me and a bunch of my other YouTube pals are uploading there quite often now. We compete against each other in challenges, talk about stuff, and just fart around. So if you're interested, be sure to swing on by. The link to the channel will be down at the top of the description. Anyways, with all of that said, go grab your spatulas. It's time to dive into Bikini Bottom to find some lost bits. Alright, so before we get to the final release of the game, let's first have a look at the demo of the game that was found on a PS2 kiosk demo disc. You know, like the ones you could play at Walmart or whatever back in the day. So the only notable difference in this version here comes in the form of the save icons that are used. I'll throw them up on screen here so you can compare them with the ones that went used in the final game, and as you can see, basically all of them not only appear in lower quality, but also from an earlier build of the game, featuring either earlier boss health bars, different looking layouts, or even an unused phase from the SpongeBob Steel Pants fight, which we'll come back to later. Also, since there's not too much to talk about, as a small bonus, let's throw the Game Boy Advance version of the game in here too, for good measure. This version only has 2 unused graphics. First, a crude programmer art placeholder graphic for a door, warp, and DLG, thought to be an abbreviation of dialogue. And secondly, there are graphics that make up this animation of Hans with flames coming out the back. Huh, talk about nautical nonsense. Alright, now on to the final version of the game for the original Xbox, PS2, and GameCube. Now, if you know anything about this game's unused content, you may know that there is a lot of it, so let's get slapping. Let's first kick things off with some unused graphics. We got these early unused button textures, this on flag, this pink backdrop meant apparently for some cinematic. The button here in this texture is also never used. Then there's this early unused version of the X icon used for things that can be bubble bashed. There's this temporary placeholder graphic with the word temp right on it, pretty self-explanatory. Then we have these 2 unused text box graphics, this tile set, which based on the name looks like it was meant for the throw fruit and would feature different fruits and their leaves. Then there's this purple rock texture found amongst the files for the rock bottom area. There's some unused arrows graphics that's apparently related to slides. And then there's this texture for Muscle SpongeBob that's mostly unused. Now I say mostly because apparently some parts of it are actually used for the eyes of SpongeBob Steel Pants during the final phase of that fight. Next are several graphics left over from an earlier version of the game's menu and heads-up display. First are these spatulas, as well as this early version of the shiny objects, both of which were replaced with 3D models in the final game. There's this small bubble, a Krabby Patty, an anchor that was actually later reused in the SpongeBob SquarePants movie game. Then we have these pineapple textures that were replaced with the jellyfish. There's this early version of the underwear health graphic that could also be seen in some early gameplay footage and screenshots of the game. We have this bubble meter believed to have been intended to be used with SpongeBob's bubble attacks. And lastly is this outline sketch of SpongeBob, as well as something that would apparently fill it in. Unfortunately, it isn't duplicable. We'll talk about this later too. What exactly this was intended for, or what would have caused the graphic to be colored in, is currently unknown. And last for the unused textures is actually a graphic of, I guess, a mock-up credit roll. This was obviously a joke by the developers, as this is a far cry from any traditional credit roll, with the rolls all being a play on words, like an art detector, a lead promlem, a gay designer, and a lead animosity. Yeah, word indeed. Next up, now onto some animations that are normally never seen in the game. All unused, we have this goofy looking walking animation for Plankton, this idle animation for Robo Patrick, and similarly an idle animation for Robo SpongeBob. Then for Sandy, we have an unused animation of her doing some push-ups found amongst the files for the SpongeBob's Dream stage, as well as an animation of Sandy losing her footing. This one too is meant for and used in the unused phase in the SpongeBob Steel Pants fight, but again, later. Then we got this unused animation of the mime meant for when the player would attack him, this early version of the attack animation for Hammer, these unused walking animations for Squidward, Mr. Krabs, Gary, Larry, and Mermaid Man and Barnacle Man. There's also this unused animation of Mermaid Man running away from something out of fear. And in a similar fashion, there's this unused animation of Mrs. Puff walking in which she too looks pretty scared. Then next are a few unused animations for Bubble Buddy. There's once again another walking animation, as well as 2 more idle animations in which Bubble Buddy appears to be waving and jumping for joy or something. Finally is this long boy, titled Worm_Bind. This textureless model is found amongst the files for the Shady Shoals area, and once again can be hacked into the game. Once hacked in, it's also revealed that it too has several associated unused animations. these being 2 separate idle animations, one for walking, as well as one for being attacked. Since this model has what looks like a leash around it, it's believed that this is Mr. Doodles. You know, Mr. Krabs' pet worm from that one episode. Yeah, you know the one. So we went over some unused animations, but now let's bring it around town to the models that are normally unseen. First are 2 unused Blue Lagoon model variants of these fish NPCs. That's got to be the most Google T-pose I think I've ever seen. Then we have this unused shiny object collection box where the player was once planned to drop off shiny objects. This was replaced by collabs in the final version. And speaking of the shiny objects, there's also this unused row of them, and they're labeled too in case you didn't know what they were. The orange model of this row can actually be seen in this early image of the game's hub area too. Then there's this unused exit sign meant for Sand Mountain, this taxi model with some messed up texturing. Well, half of this model is seen in the game's taxi stops, but here we can see it in its entirety. Then there's this unused model of a smelly sundae. Now this was actually once intended to be a power-up in the game, and it was even seen in some pre-release footage. Surprisingly, it turns out that this item can still be hacked into the game, and its intended effects too are left over. As seen here in this footage by Fun Lunda, I probably butchered that, I'm sorry. The power-up would allow Patrick or SpongeBob to run faster and destroy basically all enemies with only one basic attack, all while leaving behind a cloud of subpar smelling breath. Though it would only have lasted for about 10 seconds, it is still believed that this power-up was removed for being too powerful and, I suppose, unnecessary. I think it's too bad though, as it's another nice reference to a classic episode of SpongeBob. Then moving along, there are these graphics of stuff on a shelf meant to be seen inside of SpongeBob's kitchen. And these aren't actually unused, but rather unseen, as they can surprisingly still be found outside of the kitchen if you hack the camera. It looks pretty messed up, but here they are. As such, it is thought that they are either just misplaced by the developers, or maybe they were just moved last minute. Next are several more early models that were updated for the final release. There's this early hint sign featuring Gary. Gary was eventually replaced by just a question mark. Sorry, fella. Then there are these early models of the Thunder Tiki as well as the Flying Tiki. Now, although the large lips were removed, the Flying Tiki that is used, interestingly, still carries the name Tiki Lovey-Dovey. Next is this push button featuring the push texture we went over earlier. Then there's this early toll gate as well as this early version of the thick raft guy, where he was seen wearing green pants, as well as a shirt that's identical in color to his skin. This must have been changed since it's very hard to tell that he's even wearing a shirt. Then we have this unseen clarinet meant for who else but Squidward, and finally there's this soccer ball. Wow, a soccer ball that goes unused. Haven't seen that before. Anyways, this soccer ball was actually reworked into the watermelon throw fruit. This soccer ball was also seen in several early screenshots of the game too. Now, I mentioned the shelves that are found just outside of SpongeBob's kitchen, but there are actually several other instances of objects being found hidden away from normal view. Now, many of these are featured in the Boundary Break episode made by She Says, so I encourage you to check it out for all of them, but I'll go over some of my favorite ones here. First are these 2 tikis hidden away behind this lodge in Sand Mountain. And Barnacle Boy can be found inside the Mermalair computer. Now this I find very interesting. The Barnacle Boy inside the computer here is actually the object that speaks to you when interacting with the computer. It's pretty strange. Then there's this model of a shipwreck found underneath the Flying Dutchman's graveyard that is never seen even when the lake is drained. This is actually the same model that's found right above it here, so it's pretty strange why it's duplicated down there. Lastly are hidden Duplicatotrons, several of which are underground, hidden duplicates of the ones found above ground. Huh, duplicate Duplicatotrons, go figure. This is the case in Sandy's Dream here, in the downtown area here, as well as in Sand Mountain here. Let's keep things going. Now let's first check out some unused audio files, of which there is a lot. First are several unused sound effects. I'll quickly just play through them all here.
0, 9, 8, 7.
Then
6,
we have numerous
5,
unused dialogue
4,
recordings for
3,
SpongeBob, Sandy,
2,
and Patrick,
1.
and these range from the characters seeing enemies to Patrick's reaction to being at the top of Jellyfish Fields, an area that in the final game it's impossible to use him in. Now there are just way too many of these dialogue lines to play through all of them here, so in the interest of time, I'll just play through some of my favorites.
He's only big if you think he is. I like Bubbles. Hard as a rock. Oh, don't look down, Patrick. Don't look down. Ah, I looked.
You're just a bag full of jelly. That's the orneriest robot yet. Well, don't that beat all?
Gotta watch out for the boom. Oh, I'm being shanghaied! Watch the tentacles! Ouch!
If you're interested in hearing the rest, I'll leave a link to the Cutting Room Floor article where you can give them a listen. Similarly, there are several bits of dialogue that do go used, but unused alternate takes of them are left over. These are left over for SpongeBob, Patrick, Sandy, Mr. Krabs, Squidward, and Mrs. Puff. Again, I won't play them all, just some of the ones that I found more interesting than the rest.
SpongeBob to Mission Control, the launch is a go. SpongeBob to Mission Control, the launch is a go.
Howdy, Mrs. Puff. Howdy, Mrs. Puff.
Don't ask questions you aren't prepared to handle the answers to.
Don't ask questions you aren't prepared to handle the answer to.
I always thought the gym was trained. I thought the gym was already trained.
With the unused audio out of the way, time for everyone's favorite, some unused text strings. Yay. First are text references to some unused items, a bus ticket, a stall key, as well as a sundae, likely the one we went over earlier. Then there are some early names for some of the stages in the game, and several text strings related to a completely different game, Scooby-Doo Night of 100 Frights. Heavy Iron Studios, who developed Battle for Bikini Bottom, also developed that game, so it's no surprise that these are probably left over from developing Scooby-Doo. The text leftovers include all of the mission names from the Scooby-Doo game, a message asking the player to insert the Scooby-Doo game disc, and then exclusive to the Xbox version of Battle for Bikini Bottom, there's this long string of text, again referencing stuff from the Scooby-Doo game. Next are several scrapped dialogue messages from several characters. These include Bubble Buddy appearing in SpongeBob's dream, Squidward in Mr. Krabs' dream, Larry in Sandy's dream, an extended dialogue bit when SpongeBob interacts with the box office guy, unused lines for Patrick, early placeholder lines for Larry, Bubble Buddy, and Mrs. Puff meant for and used in the early version of the Goo Lagoon level, similar early text for the Flying Dutchman, and then my favorite, some unused lines for Bubble Buddy. Now these seem very uncharacteristic of Bubble Buddy, and these are believed to have just been written in by a bored programmer. Next is some normally unseen log text that is printed whenever you collect underwear, lose all of it, or respawn after drowning. This string reads, decrement time equals 0, ass saved. Totally. And surprisingly, that's not the only non-G-rated text string in this game. The player asset that's loaded into memory at the start of the game is literally just named this. And lastly, although not exactly unused text per se, there are several normally unseen configuration values. These include some cheats that I guess could have been toggled by the developers for debugging purposes, like being able to switch between characters on the fly by pressing a direction on the D-pad, being able to toggle flying around, disabling forced conversations with NPCs, some sort of SpongeBob cheat, and one dealing with portals. There are also leftover configuration settings for the sundae power-up, which obviously go unused since that item is also unused. These are to configure the power-up's duration, as well as what I assume is maybe the factor that the power-up was to increase the character's attack power button. And finally, once again, are several configurations left over from the Scooby-Doo game. So I mentioned some early unused menu graphics earlier, but surprisingly many of these can actually still be seen in the game, as an early version of the menu can be hacked in by swapping some files. When loaded in, it will annoyingly overlap the normal pause menu, but as we can see here, it contains some pretty interesting stuff. Firstly, we can see many of the early menu graphics we went over earlier, like the pineapples, which otherwise are unused, and there's even a reference here to a scrapped Glove World stage. It's believed that Glove World was later reworked into the Goo Lagoon Pier that we see in the final game. Next up, SpongeBob Battle for Bikini Bottom has a total of 4 video clips that go unused. 2 of these are just clips of logos fading in and out, the first being the Heavy Iron Studios logo, and the second having it joined by the logos of THQ, Renderware, and Nickelodeon Games. Nothing too crazy. And then the other 2 clips are left over from a completely different game that I bet you will never guess what it is. Okay, yeah, it's the Scooby-Doo game again. The first of these is again a logo video for Heavy Iron Studios, and the second is just the intro video from the Scooby-Doo game. My god, these graphics have not aged well. I guess that since these videos were already complete from developing the Scooby-Doo game, they might have served as a placeholder intro clip for this game until the proper SpongeBob ones were made. So I've been beating around the kelp a lot this video for this, but now it's finally time to fully address it. This, of course, is the fairly well-known scrapped phase from the fight with SpongeBob Steel Pants. This phase would have featured Robo SpongeBob with anchor arms and a Speedo. Based on its appearance, this phase is thought to have been planned to occur after defeating the boss for the first time. The fight was apparently to have the player throw scattered bits of rubble at the anchor arms to pop them, and as such, it seems Patrick was intended to be the character for this fight as he is the only one that can throw them. Several characters are seen on the sidelines of this fight, including some like Mr. Krabs, who aren't seen in any of the phases that are used. Now, I don't know about you guys, but this is certainly some nightmare fuel right here. You might have put 2 and 2 together by now, but these arms use that part of that otherwise unused texture I mentioned earlier. But in addition to that, there are also apparently some scrapped dumbbell and weight models that were meant to be used here too. Now this fight is actually tougher to hack in, as unless certain specific files are removed from the game, trying to force the game to load this phase will simply just cause it to crash. Interestingly, this scrapped phase could be shortly seen in a trailer for the game on the bonus disc that came with certain versions of Mario Kart Double Dash. It's only seen for a few seconds, so blink and you might miss it. And now for the last stop of this video, finally, my favorite part, let's talk about this game's unused levels. Battle for Bikini Bottom has 3 unused levels, or I guess really 2 unique unused levels for us to see. That's because the first 2 of these are both early versions of the Goo Lagoon stage. Listed amongst the files of the Goo Lagoon level as New Folder and Working, these 2 earlier builds of the level have a build date of May 11th and May 12th respectively. The final version of the Goo Lagoon level has a build date of September 18th of that same year, so this puts these early versions a good 4 months earlier than the final. Right away, it's clear this is unfinished. The lighting is different, textures are off, sound effects are missing, you can easily walk out to areas you aren't supposed to, and these levels are very unstable and they crash a lot. Since the 2 early versions of Goo Lagoon are only a day apart, they are virtually the same. That said, these early stages contain a bunch of interesting stuff. First of all, it doesn't take long to realize that this early version ends up using a lot of the otherwise unused models and textures we went over earlier. We can see the early Thunder and Flying Tiki models, the Fat Fish Fella, the original hint sign with Gary, the push texture, the soccer balls are apparently supposed to have appeared here, but for some reason they appear invisible, and even the toll gate here has the original early unused model. Now, half of the time it was fun to explore this early version and see glitches like being able to walk under the water here. Wait, we're already underwater. But the other half of the time was really frustrating since the game would basically crash like every few minutes. And then the last unused level is Patrick's real intended dream level known as Screaming for Ice Cream. Now this was intended to be a part of the SpongeBob's Dream stage, similar to how Mr. Krabs, Sandy, and Squidward each got their own level, whereas the final product of Patrick's dream was just a dark void with him standing in the middle. Anyways, right off the bat, it's no shocker that this unused level is quite unfinished. Not only is it lacking a skybox, which makes everything look that much more like a fever dream, but several of the models appear messed up as well, and this slowly moving spoon is pretty janky. Interestingly, this stage is only left over in the GameCube and Xbox versions, as it was removed in the PS2 one. It's overall a pretty short stage, which has you jumping around various desserts like ice cream, cupcakes, and more. Just like the early Goo Lagoon levels, here too we can see some early otherwise unused graphics like the tikis here. And towards the end of the stage, there's even a golden spatula left over, which can still be collected, allowing you to basically 101% the game, or 201% if you use certain cheats. Then around this area are what look like large onion slices, as well as tiny little pickles, both of which actually hurt you. I guess Patrick truly thinks that vegetables are evil. Then also there's this strange ascending line of enemy robots, as well as other NPCs, including several fish and even Larry. The robots can be destroyed, but outside of just reacting to being attacked by the player, the other NPCs can't be interacted with. Whether these NPCs were intended to be placed somewhere in the stage, or if this was just some sort of testing feature, is unclear. Then lastly, after jumping onto these banana-shaped platforms back towards the start, you can actually warp to Patrick's mine, which is the area that is used in the final game. This makes it seem that rather than this stage being a replacement to what was used, it would have been more so a stepping stone to get there.
Don't worry.
I think it's a shame this section wasn't implemented, as I think it's rather unfair that the other characters get such cool dream stages, while Patrick got shafted. Now apparently the developers of the rehydrated remake of this game have said that previously cut content from the original is going to be added in. I'm really excited to see what's going to be added. I doubt stuff like the unused dialogue will be added in, but it'd be cool to see the scrapped Patrick's dream state return, or the unused phase in the Robo SpongeBob fight. I guess only time will tell. And with that wraps up this Battle for Bikini Bottom Lost Bits video, and I hope you enjoyed. As always, if you did, be sure to drop a like down below and check out some more of my Lost Bits videos, like the one I made on Mario Party 3 by clicking on the card right here. Also, be sure to subscribe here for future videos, swing by my other social media things, which are all linked down in the description below, and if you want to support the channel, check out my merch over at TetraBitGaming.com, or consider becoming the latest member of the Bit Club to get some nifty extra channel perks like being able to see videos early. Click on that join button below for more information. Anyways guys, thank you so much for tuning in, and I will see you in a bit.
I am coming, ready or no, here I come.
Hey everyone, my name's Tomato Anus, also known as the One Pump Chump, and this is a segmented 100% speedrun of SpongeBob SquarePants Battle for Bikini Bottom for the original Xbox. This run is performed by Shift, the current world record holder for this category, who also helped me write the script to make sure it's all as accurate as possible. If you would like to watch either this segmented run without commentary or Shift's current 100% world record, there are links in the description below. Also, as I said earlier, this run is done on the Xbox version of the game. There were 3 different releases of this game: the home console version, the PC version, and the Game Boy Advance version. All 3 are different games with different plots and even gameplay styles. This is the home console version, which is a 3D platformer action adventure. If you're unfamiliar with the game in the category, here's a quick rundown of everything you should know going into this run. The general story of the game is that local business owner Sheldon J. Plankton has accidentally set a horde of robots loose upon Bikini Bottom. We play as SpongeBob SquarePants, Patrick Star, and Sandy Cheeks as we attempt to defeat the robots and make everything normal again. This is done by playing through 13 different levels, and the game ends upon completion of the final level, the Chum Bucket Lab. In order to access most of the levels, you have to have a certain amount of an in-game collectible called a golden spatula. The amount of golden spatulas required to enter a level ranges from none up to 75 for the final level. As I said earlier, this is a 100% run, which is defined as collecting all unique golden spatulas in the game, which there are 100 of, as well as collecting any other source items that are required to obtain the necessary golden spatulas. Source items include the game's most common currency, which is called a shiny object, as well as 80 of Patrick's socks, and a few other miscellaneous collectibles that are unique to certain levels. By collecting all unique golden spatulas, all the other collectibles required to obtain the spatulas, and completing the game, we will have completed a 100% run. With that being said, let's get into the run.
This will fill out your map.
Ready, kids?
This will fill out your map. This will fill out your map. This will fill out your map.
Oh, no you don't. Hi, I'm Chicago Guy, here to tell you that this video is sponsored by Displate. Displate sells high-quality posters printed on metal, like this Chicago one I have. Or these retro movie poster ones I also have, but they're in Japanese because I, Chicago Guy, am cultured. This one's in green, so I can't really do the green screens. I can hear you already though, but Chicago